Have you ever been so fired up in a moment that you felt like your whole life was about to change, only to realize that the motivation that you felt in that moment was nowhere to be found when it's time for the work to begin? Because here's the truth, men, we don't need more motivation. We're actually drowning in it. Here's what I mean. You can feel motivated and fired up after church on a Sunday because you heard a great message. Or you might be motivated because you've been in an electric atmosphere and you're inspired to change. You could be in a conference, or you could have gone to a retreat or a training. Maybe you've had a good conversation that inspired you and me to change. Or you've heard a TED Talk or a motivational speech that's got you all fired up. Maybe you are going into a brand new year, or you just had a birthday and so you're motivated and inspired to do better, to be better, and to change your life. But here's the issue. Motivation shows up when things are easy. Have you ever noticed that? Motivation is there in a moment of inspiration when there is no resistance, and then it's disappearing when it's required. So when we need the motivation that we felt yesterday, when the alarm clock goes off, it's nowhere to be found. So in this video, I'm talking about the problem with motivation. This is going to be a good one. Let's dive right into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video episode. My name is Lucas Gonzalez. So glad that you're here. We are entering the best time of the year. It is the week of Christmas. So wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this, I want to say Merry Christmas to you and yours. And I hope that it is just a great, great holiday for you. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Whenever you're watching this, I'm praying that this year, 2026, be the best year of your life, my life, and I'm believing God for some big things. So in this video, I just want to start by talking about the problem with motivation, or why motivation fails us. And here are some truths, some simple truths that I'm sure we can agree on as foundational things when it comes to the problem with motivation. It's born in a moment. So motivation is actually momentary. It is not sustaining, right? It doesn't last. It's got a short shelf life. It shows up all the time, but it is born in a moment of comfort or inspiration. So motivation is momentary. It's emotional. If you're in the right setting or you're in the right atmosphere, motivation can inspire you to change. But if you're in the wrong atmosphere, or when you actually go to do the work, it's like, all right, where's that feeling? More than a feeling. Are you with me? So it is born in a moment. Discipline is actually structural. Discipline is a choice. All right. When we say we're disciples of Christ, we are a disciplined follower of Jesus. Motivation responds to inspiration. All right. It responds to atmosphere. It responds to what's going on around us. The discipline responds to commitment. So I'm going to decide. I'm going to make a decision. So motivation is born in a moment. It's momentary. And so it will get you excited. All right. It can be a spark, but discipline is what is going to get the results. So here's a simple test. When it comes to motivation, you can be like, I'm going to wake up early in the morning and I'm going to get all this stuff done before the kids are up, or before I got to go to work, or before I got to show up, and wherever I'm required, I'm going to get up. It's going to be dark. It's going to be cold, and I'm going to better my life, whether that is spending time with Jesus or going for a run or going for the gym. The motivation that you felt to spark the idea of change, okay, it's not, I don't mean to be negative, but it's not going to be there to the same degree at 5 a.m. the next morning. All right. So motivation loves the idea of change, but discipline shows up when that alarm goes off, when it's difficult. The moment you actually need motivation, you can't find it. It's nowhere to be found. All right. So if growth is depending, listen to this. If growth actually depended on our motivation, All right. Or if growth depended on motivation, no one would grow. Or if motivation is all that we needed, then all of us would be where we wanted to be, because in moments of our life, we are experiencing great emotions and great waves of motivation. So let me give you kind of like a biblical framework or a biblical story to kind of highlight and illustrate this point. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 24, Paul's writing to the church and he says, I discipline my body and I keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself would be disqualified. And this is where motivation will not get you the results. So Paul's writing, I discipline my body. I keep it under control after preaching to others so that I myself would not be disqualified. So motivation is not going to give you the discipline and the fortitude to stick with something long term when it gets challenging or gets difficult. All right. And so why this matters is because Paul is not saying I'm motivated to discipline my body or I feel inspired. He says, I discipline myself like an athlete. So spiritual maturity in your life and in my life is intentional. All right. It is not emotional. It is not driven by feelings. Your feelings will lie to you. Feelings can be fickle. All right. Spiritual maturity is intentional. It is what Paul says. I discipline myself. Let me give you another scripture. All right. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28. You're going to love this. I love the book of Proverbs. It says, a man without self-control or without self-discipline is like a city broken down and left without walls. So when we rely on motivation to get us to change, but then we don't have the discipline or the self-control to do what we say we're going to do in a moment of inspiration, it's like living a life with broken down walls. The enemy can come in and come out, or things are missing, or we never are getting the results because the discipline and the self-control is what fortifies your life. Okay. It actually, discipline equals freedom. All right. So sometimes there's this misnomer or this false idea that if I'm disciplined, I'm throwing out freedom. No, actually, discipline brings freedom into your life. So motivation doesn't build walls. Discipline builds walls. We see this in the life of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11, we see Matthew recording the temptation of Jesus. And here's how it says. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days and 40 nights. And in that time, he was hungry. All right. So here's a couple things about this story that I think are really powerful and are appropriate when we're talking about the problem with motivation and the need for discipline in our lives. Jesus enters the wilderness at a moment of being physically weak, but he was entering into wilderness because he was led by the Spirit. The Bible says he was hungry, he was isolated, he was under pressure, and he was tempted by the enemy. The writer of Hebrews says that Jesus was tempted in every way that we are tempted, yet without sin. Okay, so why does he not fail? Why is he able to stand firm? Because he's not looking or relying on motivation to get through those 40 days and 40 nights. If you've ever done like a long-term fast, the idea of doing a fast can be so motivating. Like, oh man, I am going to fast and I'm not going to eat for 7 or 21 days or 40 days. And I'm going to just be able to be so sharp spiritually. I'm going to feel so close to God. And then like day one at 5 o'clock, you're starving. Okay. It's really, really challenging. But the idea of the motivation, and the growth we'll experience is like, oh yeah. But then when the fast shows up and on day 2, breakfast or lunch, you're like, I am going to eat my arm. Okay. So motivation is inspiring, but discipline is, again, it's what keeps you going. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted. He did not allow his circumstances to determine his discipline in that moment. He had already formed the habits before the temptation showed up. He was already disciplined in his life. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 11, it says that the devil went away. This is after the 3 temptations, and the angels came and took care of Jesus. All right. So it's just this idea that we've got to have things built up in our life before the temptation shows up, because the motivation will inspire you to change, but then temptation and challenge will come and it will test that motivation. It will test that. And that's why we need discipline in our life. In fact, one of the fruits of the Spirit at work in our life is self-control. Being able to say yes to what we should say yes to, no to what we should say no to. The Bible has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of self-control, of self-discipline. All right? And so here's the idea. Motivation is not going to sustain you long term. Let me show you. You might be able to look at that or hear that story and be like, yeah, well, that's the life of Jesus. Of course. All right. Of course, he was 100 out of 100. Okay. But let's look at motivation and discipline in the life of David. So this is David in 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting in verse 1. It says, in the springtime, when kings go off to war, all right, in the springtime, when kings go off to war, David remained in Jerusalem. So there was a rhythm to the life of David. In the spring, kings went off to war. There were rhythms in his life. And anytime we get off of our rhythm, we are setting ourselves up to be vulnerable to the attacks and the schemes and the wiles of the enemy. Okay, so if you've got healthy rhythms and patterns in your life and you get off of those, we are susceptible to the work and the temptation of the enemy. So instead of going off to war, David stays back. And while he's on the roof of his palace, he sees Bathsheba bathing and he has a desire for her. Okay. And so because he was off his rhythm, because he was out of his rhythm, okay, he was susceptible to the enemy. All right. The Bible doesn't say that David stopped loving God. It doesn't say that David lost his calling or forfeited his kingship. Okay. It doesn't even say he rejected his faith. It says that he was not disciplined when discipline was required of him. In the spring, when kings go to war, he stayed back because he didn't have discipline in his life when discipline was required of him. Okay. It was a moral failure, but it wasn't just a moral failure. It started off because discipline was missing in that moment and in that season of his life. All right. He abandoned rhythms, responsibility, and structure. And when discipline left, temptation comes in. All right. And so let's look at these two kind of stories, the life of Jesus and the life of David. Jesus embraced discipline, didn't rely on motivation. He resisted temptation. David avoided discipline, okay, let those rhythms slip in his life, and then he fell into sin. All right, so same pressure, different posture. Same pressure, different results. The truth is, okay, when you practice something privately, it will sustain you publicly. So when you have discipline to say no when no one is watching, then you will have the discipline to say no when all the pressure is on you. When you are in an environment that is not healthy for you and no one would know, and you say, I'm not going to indulge, I'm not going to take part of it, okay, it will sustain you publicly. And when you want to change, and what people do is they praise change when they see it. But no one sees the change of you waking up early and going to the gym or seeking God first early in the morning, right? The motivation that you feel like, yeah, my whole life is going to change this year. No one sees the change until it's been consistent in your life for 90 days, 120 days, a year of consistency, 10 years of consistency, right? Noah built the ark for 120 years with no attaboys and no pats on the back, any of those kind of things. And so motivation in that moment, hey, I'm going to send a great flood on the earth. It's like, oh man, I better build a boat. I better build an ark. I'm fired up. All right. And then it's like, hey, where's this rain? What is going on? Okay. What we've got to understand is because motivation will get you started, but it is not a reliable source of ongoing discipline in our life. All right. So let me just tie this all back in. Motivation doesn't save David. Motivation wasn't enough in his life. Discipline is what separated Jesus' story and David's story. And so what side of the story do we want to fall in on? Do we want to pattern ourselves after the life of Jesus? Or do we want to see ourselves fall into the pattern of David? Now you can be like, well, David was great. David was a man after God's own heart. David was chosen by God even when Saul was king. Yes, of course. But we should be striving to be who God has called us to be and living up to the finished work of the cross in our life and allow the Spirit to guide us into all truth. That is what we want to do. So we don't want to look at, it's like when people compare themselves to Jesus and be like, yeah, but Jesus drank wine. It's like, well, if the only time you're comparing yourself to Jesus is when you're drinking, I think you're missing the mark here. And so what we want to do is we want to see Jesus's model for discipline and leaning into the things of the Spirit, and we want to pattern ourselves off of those things. So let me give you a couple reasons why motivation fails men, but we keep looking for it. We keep following for it. Number one, motivation at times can feel spiritual. What do I mean by that? Motivation at times feels spiritual because we sometimes are motivated and inspired to change in spiritual atmospheres. Right? You can be in a prayer meeting, you can be in a worship service, you can be underneath the anointing of some great preacher and just feel fired up and motivated to change, but excitement does not equal obedience, right? But we feel like, oh man, I'm going to change this time. This time is different because we can be in spiritual moments when it happens, okay? Number two, motivation requires no cost. It requires there is no threshold for motivation. It's unlimited depending on when we receive it, how we hear from it, when it comes to us. And it can feel really good at times, okay? It requires no cost, no routine, no sacrifice, no consistency, yet motivation can keep showing up and keep telling you, man, this is going to change, or this is your year, or something is going to get different. All right. And then motivation lets you delay what you should be doing right here, right now. What I should be doing right here, right now. I should say no to the cookie, right? Ah, man, tomorrow morning, I'm going to eat so clean tomorrow. You'd be able to white glove test my diet. But for right now, that apple pie looks good. Okay. It's this idea. Motivation lets you put off tomorrow because tomorrow I'm going to be motivated to change. But for right now, this looks good. I'm going to give into it, but I'm going to fix it tomorrow. And so the motivation lies to you because it allows you to push off or to delay responsibility. I'll start Monday. I'll start January 1. Then January 1 is on like a Friday. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to start Monday. And then Monday, you're having a bad morning. You're like, I'm going to start Tuesday. And Tuesday, I'm going to start next week. And so motivation allows you to keep pushing off what we should be doing right here, right now. So what needs to happen? And I hope you have seen it in this video. I want to compare and contrast. I want to shift our ideas from allowing motivation to be a spark and then put systems in place so that we can live lives of discipline. Okay, so the shift would be turning from motivation and building systems and habits and rhythms and routines in our life to be disciplined, to live as a disciple. Okay, so you have this moment, this aha moment of revelation, or yes, this is good. And then we've got to obey and apply that inspiration or that moment of revelation. So it moves from just revelation to obedience. And then from obedience, continual obedience, we see the transformation in our life, not revelation to a moment of emotion to a moment of delayed action, which equals inaction. Okay, so what we want to look at is, this is what James says in James chapter 1, verse 22. To be doers of the word and not hearers only, thereby deceiving yourself. So when we hear something, but we don't apply it into our life, who's the one being set up for deception? Who's the one that is hurting themselves? Me. Who's the one with broken down walls in their life? Me. I'm the one hurting myself. All right, so I want to be a doer of the word. Motivation hears, discipline does. Motivation listens, it hears, but discipline obeys. And so this is what it looks like. And here is why motivation is more attractive, if you will, than discipline. Because discipline is boring. It is rhythm. It is routine. It is habit. It is predictable. And discipline is boring. You know, you can get hype. You can get fired up talking to your boys about the changes that you're going to make. And you guys can, we can give energy to each other. Man, that's going to be awesome. And then we're going to do this. But that motivation you feel in that moment, where is it? It doesn't show up when we need it. So discipline is not hyping you up. Discipline is boring. It's the same time. It's the same place. It's the same habits. Again and again, consistently stacked up over time. Discipline never asks the question, how do you feel? How are you feeling? Who cares? Discipline doesn't care how I feel. Discipline asks what is required. Right? Luke 9:23. If anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily. Not like, hey, how do you feel? You having a good day? Nah, fam, miss me with that, right? All right. It says discipline is not asking, are you feeling good today? No, it's saying, come on, what is required today to be who God has called you to be, to get to where you want to go. All right? Daily, not when you're feeling motivated, not when you're feeling inspired, daily. So here's some practical application when it comes to building habits and rhythms and structure in your life to be the man that God has called you to be. All right? Ask a couple questions. What habit do I keep waiting to feel ready for? What is something that I know is a benefit to me, but I am waiting to implement or put action behind it until I am ready for it? Okay? Number 2, where am I relying on motivation instead of building structure in my life or rhythms and routines? And number 3 would be, what discipline would solve the problem? Oh my God, this is so good. What discipline would solve the problem I keep praying about. That is so good. Proverbs says that we ruin our lives by our own decisions and then we blame the Lord. And so this question is like working in parallel to that proverb. What discipline would solve the problem of my life that I keep praying about? It's like, God, would you just please open up the windows of heaven and pour out a financial miracle in my life? And it's like, bruh, stop spending money on stupid stuff. Like, God, would you just give me the strength to wake up? It's like, no, just stop eating the cheeseburger, breakfast, noon, and lunch. You know? I always joke and I'm like, some people think that they're spiritual because they talk in tongues. They pray in the Spirit. I'm like, yeah, you may think you're spiritual because you talk in tongues, but you are mean in English, right? So I don't care how spiritual you think you are. I don't care how deep you think you are, right? If you're mean, you're mean. And this is the idea. There are things in our life as we think we're spiritual. We're asking God to fix in our life because we're just a good disciple of prayer. It's like, no, he's asked you. He has partnered you. He has given you delegated authority to do what you are praying about. So what discipline would solve the problem that I keep praying about? All right. So here's a line. God often answers prayers with our responsibility, a partnership. Okay? So let me just close out by saying motivation is not bad. Motivation is not bad. It's just not the entire journey. It's incomplete. It will start you, but discipline will shape you. And then consistency will transform you. So motivation starts you, discipline shapes you, and then consistency transforms you. All right? So if I want a different life this year, we don't need more motivation. We need discipline. We need different habits. We need to follow the Spirit the way Jesus followed the Spirit. All right? So again, I just want to encourage you, motivation's good, but build the habits, the structures, the rhythms, the routines in your life and my life so that we can get to the result that we ultimately feel like we want to achieve. And that can be in any area of your life, spiritually, soulfully, financially, right? Emotionally, spirit, soul, and body. I know I went through a lot of content in this video. If you want my notes, you can click on the link in this video. I have a Skool community where I put the notes to my videos. And if you want to look over them, almost like show notes, you can find them in there. You can come on in. I would love for you to be a part of it. And it's just a community of men who are wanting to grow and keep each other accountable. If not, that is okay. If you're tired of starting over and over and then fading out and starting strong and fading out and you want to see real growth, again, I just want to invite you into my community. Okay, the link will be in the description of this video. All right, I'm believing that this is going to be a great year for my life and for your life. All right, I hope you have a great day, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I will see you, my friend, on the next video. Stay blessed. Stay blessed by the best. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen.